The meeting to order of the Water Commission on August 21st. Let's get started with roll call, please.
Commissioner Doba,
Here.
Commissioner Bills,
Here.
Commissioner Paul, Commissioner Watsack, Commissioner Noman,
Here.
Commissioner Garcia, Commissioner Vane.
Here. Thank you. Looks like we do have a quorum. The next item on the agenda is public participation. And in this part of the agenda, if anybody wishes to address the commission, please state your name and address for the record. The open meeting law prohibits
We just lost sound online. Is it just me?
No, I don't hear it either.
No, they're muted, I think.
I'll let Tamara know. Looks like they might be trying to fix it.
How about now? Can you hear us now?
We can hear you.
Okay.
Right on. Good
Great.
work.
All right. I had just gone through the discussion on public participation. Is there anyone here from the public who would like to speak?
Commissioner Doba, we have a request from Nicole Ellman, but I believe you put her on at 5C after the presentation.
After the presentation, yes. Thank you. Okay, we don't have any public participation at this time. The next item is the approval of the minutes from our July 17th, 2025 meeting. I hope you've had an opportunity to take a look at our minutes. We can take a minute or so if you like, and I would like to have a motion, if we don't have any comments, to approve the minutes.
I move that we accept the minutes as written.
Rob has made a motion to accept the minutes. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
And John has made a second. Any comments? Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. 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 Any opposed? The minutes are approved as written. Okay, moving on to new business. Item number A is legislative updates on water-related issues. I believe Haley had requested this at our last Water Commission meeting. Haley is not here. Vice Mayor Sweet is on the agenda, and I think she's going to kick it off to me. Is that right, Vice Mayor?
It is, and thank you, Ron, for taking that over. I appreciate it.
Okay. I just have a couple of things I'm going to touch on, and I'm only going to bring them up because these are legislative issues and other issues that have been of interest to the watershed groups that I work with. And we did have one bill that has been touted quite a bit as making it through our state legislature this last session, and that's Senate Bill 1611, frequently called the Ag to Urban legislation. And that allows for the voluntary transfer of water rights from retiring agricultural land to new residential developments. It aims to conserve water by transitioning from high water use agriculture to lower intensity urban development. It's addressed to design Arizona's water needs by facilitating the constructions of new homes while simultaneously reducing overall water consumption. However, I will say that this bill is only relevant right now to the Phoenix and the Pinal active management areas. So it doesn't have any impact on us here, being as we're not in an active management area. It has been written so in the future the PEMA active management area could participate in it as well. But I don't see it as having any impact on us here around Flagstaff. Another area that I've been personally active in for a number of years has been trying to come up with a rural groundwater management tool for areas outside of AMAs. I met with Groundwater Working Group on Monday, I believe it was, of this week, and we had about 37 participants show up, but it does appear that this session, according to the governor's office, is going to be focusing on Colorado River issues instead of rural water issues. They have some severe problems they're dealing with this year with the Colorado River, obviously, as a lot of us know. So they're going to, I think the legislature is going to be focusing on that. The Coconino Partnership had a presentation on the 25th from the lobbyists that serve the city of Flagstaff and Coconino County, Bob Holmes and Tracy Sutton. And we had some questions about just some issues that we'd heard about, one being the federal land sale that was discussed quite a bit. Senator Lee, who's the chair of Energy and Natural Resources Committee from Utah, had tried to include a provision in the budget reconciliation bill to provide federal lands to states. He met strong opposition on both sides, and the provision is currently dead. Now, that's not to say that it might come back in the future in a future budget reconciliation bill, but right now, I don't think it's something we have any concerns about. The other issue was the elimination of FEMA. I don't know how many of you have heard about that. President Trump and Secretary Noem had been mentioning that FEMA could be eliminated. However, the trajectory of these thoughts has changed significantly due to the disastrous floods that they've had in Texas. And since that happened, FEMA responses were greatly slowed in Texas. Part of that had to do with the Secretary's requirement that she approve any expenditure over $100,000, and that really slowed down the reaction time for those floods there. The administration's currently backtracking on this, and according to our lobbyists, there is no appetite in Congress to abolish FEMA. There is an effort in the House with a comprehensive bill, H.R. 4669, to reform FEMA. And what that would do is it would make it an independent agency and take it away from DHS, where it's at right now. And I think at one time previously it was an independent agency. So anyway, I don't think those are anything that we have to have concerns about at this time. We'll be keeping an eye on them. And really, that's all I have to report. The state legislature isn't going to get really rolling again until January of next year. We're going to see a lot of proposed bills come out before then, water bills in particular, that I know the groups that I work with will be tracking. So that's all I can offer at this time. Be happy to try and answer any questions anybody might have on the commission or online. I guess not. So, okay, let's move on to our next item on the agenda. And this item's a result of some concerns and questions that the commission had in the past with regards to how the fifth management plan in active management areas addresses, I think, golf courses for one. And we have Mary Wirtz. Mary, are you online with us? You have to excuse me because I can't really see the screen very well from where I'm sitting up here.
Yes, I am online.
Oh, great, great. Well, Tamara, are you going to kick this off or?
Yeah, I thought I would just
Okay.
introduce me.
Go right ahead, Tamara.
Awesome. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tamara Lawless, Water Conservation Program Manager. So, as Chair Doba mentioned, we are having these conversations about what it means to be more efficient with reclaimed water and especially on turf spaces. So we have two presentations today that should give us some more information on how we can and could and should move forward on these initiatives in Flagstaff. And our first speaker is Mary Wirtz, who works for ADWR. She has served as the Industrial Conservation Program lead since February of this year, and she has a degree in sustainability from ASU. So looking forward to hearing what Mary has to say. Thanks, Mary.
Thank
Welcome,
you.
Mary.
Thanks for the introduction. I also have Melissa Sykes with us today. She's the Conservation Program Supervisor. I do have a little presentation, if you guys can see the screen, that I can go over. Let me pull it up really quick. Sorry about that.
I was going to say I don't see it yet.
All right, are you guys able to see that now?
I think right now all we can see is like all the windows of all the people online, but not the presentation yet.
All right, how about that?
Yep, now we see it. Thanks.
All right. Well, yeah, thank you for the introduction. Again, I'm Mary Wirtz, Industrial Program Lead at the Department of Water Resources. I'm going to kind of give a general overview of turf-related facilities, how they are regulated under the industrial program, and then within the management plan. I will kind of go over some regulatory context, how we got to where we are, go into what an industrial user is, and then those turf facilities, their program requirements. I'll touch on the fifth management plan and then go over some common practices that we've seen for use reduction and some accomplishments and challenges with these turf programs. So just some quick background. The Groundwater Management Act that was passed in the 1980s, this ultimately created the Department of Water Resources. This established those regulatory areas known as those active management areas. So each area has a management goal, and ADWR is required to develop a series of management plans to help guide each AMA towards their goals over a set of management periods. So the goal of these plans is to reduce the amount of groundwater withdrawal by regulated users. And by regulated users, we mean municipalities, agricultural users, and industrial users. We would say that turf facilities are an industrial water use. Each one of these regulated users is then responsible for conservation, monitoring, and reporting requirements. So an industrial user, any user that is withdrawing groundwater pursuant to a water right in the active management areas, or it is an industrial user that receives water from some sort of municipality or a water provider. Every industrial user is responsible for those monitoring, conservation, and reporting requirements. We then specify the industrial users by the facility type. So we get specific with dairies, like mines, cattle feedlots, sand and gravel facilities, and then turf facilities are going to be a subsector of the industrial program. So a turf facility will be required to be regulated if they have 10 or more acres of turf. So that's kind of our threshold. If they fall under 10 acres, they are not required to comply with these conservation and reporting and monitoring requirements. But usually these are going to be schools, parks, cemeteries, golf courses, and HOAs. So the industrial program has a set of conservation program requirements that each subsector is expected to follow. And then each specific subsector will then have certain additional conservation requirements that are kind of specific to the type of facility. So the first 4 on this list are kind of the main program requirements for the industrial program as a whole. And then the last 3 are going to be specific to turf facilities. So that maximum annual water allotment, a conservation plan, and then limiting water intensive landscape. The core of the conservation program for turf facilities is really this maximum annual water allotment. I don't touch on the conservation plan in future slides. It's really just one plan that is required to be submitted by all turf facilities to kind of go over conservation practices within their facilities, what type of irrigation systems they have, if they do any education for employees, things like that. And the goal of these things, again, is to reduce groundwater withdrawal. So these maximum annual water allotments were taken into account by a lot of discussions with turf facilities, and they have kind of changed with each management plan. But the ultimate idea of it is a total allotment for each facility, and it is specific to the facility. It is a water budget, and it is issued to the facility, and then the facility kind of has the flexibility to use the water as they see fit. The allotment structure was kind of based off of application rates and assigned irrigation efficiencies. These are specific to each active management area, and were kind of, it took a lot of time to find each application rate for each AMA. The numbers I will have on this presentation are going to be the irrigation efficiency and application rates for the Prescott AMA, because that's going to be the closest to what we have for something like Flagstaff. So these application rates are based off of a 77.5% irrigation efficiency for turf.
Mary, we have a question.
Yes.
Hi, Mary. This is Rob Vane. I'm wondering, in this kind of a case, how is efficiency measured for water use? I really don't know how that is approached.
Yeah, so I don't have specific answers, but we take a lot of data from, say, USGS, the University of Arizona. We kind of look over, kind of get an average of how many acre feet of water per acre it takes to, ensure that it grows properly. So I don't know exactly where these efficiencies were pulled. Like I said, for other crop cumulative uses, we've used numbers from USGS and the University of Arizona.
Yeah, thank you.
These allotments are structured on the idea of an 18-hole golf course that has 5 acres per hole. It does not limit golf courses to these 90 acres, but that's kind of the average that we came up with. So that's what the structure is based off of. And the allotment is only given to 90 acres. So you can have more than 90 acres, but you will only have a water allotment for 90 acres of turf. We take into account number of holes and the year built. We look at year built specifically because of the Groundwater Management Act. So we kind of like to make notes of those golf courses that were built pre-Groundwater Management Act. So we say like pre-19, it depends on each active management area when the first management plan was played out, but usually it's like pre-1985 to pre-1995, just to kind of keep that in mind that some of these were built before that was even a consideration. Additionally, with this structure, we take into account types of landscaping, and we look at 3 types of landscaping. So we're going to look at turf, low water use, and water surface area. So any bodies of water at a golf course or even an HOA or something like that. And then low water use is going to be kind of the native landscape in the AMA. So in Phoenix, we're kind of looking at that native desert landscape, but not any raw desert. We're looking at native landscape, but that has a permanent irrigation system. These allotment calculations are separate. So golf courses have their own structure, and then non-golf courses have their own structure. So this allotment was for golf courses intended to encourage efficient design, construction, good water application systems. And then we do encourage limiting overseeding practices. For non-golf courses, so parks, schools, HOAs, these allotment structures were really to incentivize, less turf, less water surface area. So I'll go into how we kind of calculate each thing. I will start with non-golf courses. So first we look at, say a park, we look at the entire footprint of the park, or I'll say an HOA for this example, an entire footprint of the HOA. If that HOA has less than 30% of water intensive landscaped area, and again, we're thinking turf, low water use, or bodies of water, they'll be considered a low facility. If they have, more than 30% of their entire footprint is considered to be high water intensive landscaped area, they would be a high facility. And this is where you can see that we do incentivize those low water intensive landscaped areas. They are given a higher application rate, so a higher acre foot of water per acre for the year. So we determine how many acres of turf, surface water surface area, and then low water use landscaped at each facility. We figure out those acres and we multiply that by the application rate for each one, and then we add those together, and then that gets to ultimately your 5MP allotment. And I'll have a few more examples here after the golf one. So the golf one is done the same way. The amount of turfed acres in each type of landscape is multiplied by the application rate and then added up together. The only difference is we do have different application rates for overseeded and non-overseeded turfed acres. So we only give, a certain amount of overseeded acres, and then the rest of the acres is going to get a non-overseeded application rate. So this kind of gets where it gets a little more clearer. So this is an example of a Prescott golf course. So the golf course has a total of 233.4 turfed acres, but only 90 of those acres are going to get an allotment. So 70 are going to get the overseeded allotment, and then anything above 70 is going to get 20, a non-overseeded allotment. And that's multiplied by the application rate for each type of landscaping and then added together. And that is how we come up with a golf course's 5MP allotment. Say the total turfed acres was 50 acres and that was it, they would get all 50 acres overseeded allotment. Any questions so far regarding this?
Yeah, this is Don Bills. I'm having a little bit of trouble understanding what you mean by overseeded and non-overseeded. Can you maybe explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, so the overseeded acres will make, the grass look a little better. A lot of golf courses like to overseed because it makes their courses look a lot more lush and, pretty, but it takes a lot more water. So that is why we only, it uses more water to overseed with turf. And that's why we want to limit the amount of overseeded acres. So golf courses try to only overseed the acres of their golf course that are really integral to the course and maybe not overseed the turf that isn't as integral to the course. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, a little bit. I'm wondering also, wouldn't the type of grass that's being used have an impact on the amount of water demand for a golf course related to, how lush it looks?
Yes.
Different grasses have different characteristics that make them more lush, greener, et
Yes.
cetera, and still at the same or lower water demand.
Yeah, we definitely incentivize using those more drought tolerant turf species. Like I said, with these application rates, they're really the average of those. So it's, the middle ground of, maybe a not so great species with a better species. And I'll get into kind of in future slides how we work with course by course, because some courses will have, a better access to maybe replacing turf with a better species and so forth.
Thank you.
Mary, this is Tamara again from City Flagstaff. I was just going to clarify. So is overseeding, is that typically done as like a summer and winter mix? Like one blend is used in like the hotter months and another blend is used in the winter months down in the Phoenix metro area?
I believe so. Yeah. When it gets winter, they usually they'll replant, and then therefore they have to apply more water to the course to ensure that it grows.
Okay, yeah, I think we've heard that from some of our partners down in the Phoenix metro area, that places that have turf that's used year round will essentially apply a new seed mix as the season changes so that they can maintain like a green layer for year round. So I don't actually know if that is something that occurs in Flagstaff, since I don't know if we plant, maybe. Yeah, okay, Tim's gonna highlight this later. Great.
One more question, if I may, on this slide. I'm trying to follow what you're trying to illustrate here. I guess this slide is for golf courses, and I see you have the number of holes as 0. Is that just to disguise the identity of? Is this a slide for a specific user?
Yeah. So we just usually so for some management plans, it was a little more applicable for us to know how many holes for the 5th management plan. It's not so necessary. But yeah, ultimately, basically this just I guess I'll say some are 36 holes. So for those, we would probably have it listed that it's 36 holes. This is because it fits into our structure of an 18-hole golf course. It doesn't affect the allotment.
Yeah, and I guess.
Or we might not know. Some of this, we might not have the information, and so we use an allotment based on the information we are supplied by the facility.
Okay, here you have in this table turfed acres of, 233? And how should I interpret that relative to your prior slide that said the allotment limit is based on 90 acres?
So the allotment is only for 90 acres. So they can have more than 230. They can have more than 90 acres because obviously they have 200 acres, but they're only given an allotment for 90 acres. So they, kind of have to decide what to do with that. And that's kind of how we incentivize, cutting down on turf and really mitigating turfed acres and replacing unnecessary turf with low water use acres.
Okay, I see.
And this is something that's gotten more stringent with each management plan. So these application rates and, the 90-acre limit, this is something in the 5th management plan. It might have not been as strict as the 4th management plan. The 4th management plan, these application rates were higher. They would get more water per acre foot. And then with each management period, it decreases.
Throughout the presentation so far, you've used the word encourage and incentivize. I guess I'm uncertain. Are these binding regulations with penalties if they're not met, or are these guidelines to strive for?
So
is there any power of law behind these?
Yes, there are. So the management plans, because of the Groundwater Management Act, the management plans have regulatory authority for groundwater. So this 5 MP allotment is regulatory. They could, withdrawing more than this 5 MP allotment of groundwater would be considered an illegal use of groundwater. That could be up to a $10,000 fine per day. So there are very serious consequences for withdrawing more groundwater than you're permitted. With that being said, they're given this allotment, but they are able to use it however they see fit. So, it really is, there's no, rules on what turf to get rid of or things like that. It is just, they have this allotment, they do have to follow it, but we just encourage how they could, easy ways that they could comply with this. So, and that is, reducing turf, incentivizing other uses of water like groundwater, things like that.
Got it. Thank you.
John Nauman here. For different types of Gulf communities, such as a Gulf community that's embedded into a planned development, could that be a different plan than just a golf course that's standalone?
We would probably separate the two. So the golf course would be given their allotment, and then if it's within an HOA, and then within the HOA, if they have their own, turf and things like that, they could have a different allotment. And if they don't, then only the golf course would be regulated under this. But we do have a lot of, HOAs with golf courses within them. And it kind of just depends on the type, if they're owned by the same. So say one neighborhood, we have the HOA is owned by one owner and then the golf course is owned by another owner. That's when they're separate. We kind of separate them by entities, whereas if it's an HOA and it owns the golf course, then it would be regulated as one, if that makes sense.
So how do you encourage HOAs to conserve?
Same thing. So they have to follow their allotment. They are incentivized by ultimately having a less than 30% water intensive landscaped area for the entire footprint. But if they have more than 10 acres of turf, they are expected to follow these allotments the same as golf courses, and the penalties and compliance issues are the same as golf courses would be.
Thank you.
Mary Rondoba, does it make any difference as far as the annual water allotment, whether the water is treated effluent, whether it's groundwater, surface water, or whether it's being provided by a public water supplier?
Yes, I will get into that. I will touch on the provided by a public water supplier. So if say a golf course has, because you have to have a right to pump groundwater within an active management area. So if that golf course does not have a right and is only supplied to by a city or a water provider, the water provider is the initial responsible party. However, the water provider or the city can agree with the turf facility that they want to become an individual user, and then they both have to sign off. And then once that happens, then the turf facility will then be responsible for these conservation and reporting requirements. So it's very common, cities and water providers do not want to be responsible for ensuring compliance with this. So they ensure that the turf facility, even though they deliver the water to them, the turf facility is held responsible for these compliance actions. Getting to, sorry, any other questions?
One more question. This is Don Bills again. On the current slide, you're using the term stacking methodology, and I'm curious how that relates to an earlier slide where you indicated total allotment as being equal to a water budget. I'm just getting a little bit hung up by some of the terminology here.
Okay, I will explain it. So like I said, these water allotments come into play and they are held responsible because the management plans have that regulatory authority under the Groundwater Management Act statute. This conservation, this maximum water allotment only comes into play, we call it the one drop rule. So when one drop of groundwater is applied to the turf facility, that is when that conservation allotment will come into play. If they use 100% effluent, if they use all Colorado River water, they ultimately do not have to follow any water allotment. But when they use all groundwater, or if they're mixing, some sort of surface water with groundwater, that is when the conservation allotment comes into the play. And we look at that as stacking. So this is kind of an example. So this is a turf facility, and their water allotment, their yearly water allotment is 100 acre feet. And this black line is going to be that 100 acre feet. So they use 100 acre feet of groundwater. They're okay. They use 50 acre feet of Colorado River water and 50 acre feet of groundwater. They're still good. They're still under that threshold. They use over 100 acre feet, but it's all Colorado River water. That's okay too. They didn't use 1 drop of groundwater, so their allotment never came into play. They used the same amount of Colorado River water, but they applied 20 acre feet of groundwater. Even though they only applied 20 acre feet of groundwater, 1 drop. So that conservation allotment came into play, and now they're 20 acre feet over their allotment. And then same with this. I'll discuss this affluent prorated amount in a future slide, but kind of same thing. They can use multiple types of, water types, but as soon as that groundwater comes into play, their water allotment comes into play, and they could potentially be over. So they're both 20 acre feet in excess of their allotment, even though different water types were at play. Any questions with this?
Will you be talking about golf course design and ways you encourage a better golf course design, maybe to get below the 90 acre threshold?
Yes, a little bit in my last slides. I'll touch on that.
If I may, before you leave the stacking slide, in your right-hand column, can you walk through the effluent, what's being said in the effluent box there? Is there a correction factor?
Yeah, so another incentive that we have in our management plans is to use effluent. So if only effluent is used, it's not groundwater, so you can ultimately use however much you like. But if you are mixing effluent with groundwater, a prorated amount of effluent comes into play. So each acre foot of effluent is multiplied by 0.6. So 0.6 is the rate at which effluent is prorated in the Prescott AMA. And so they used 50 acre feet of effluent, but it's only going to count as 30 acre feet. So incentivizing them to use effluent when they can and when they have access to it.
Do you know the source of the 60% figure?
I do not.
Okay, thank you.
So to kind of understand that, this is an allotment structure to look at an average turf facility, but each turf facility, there's countless of them in active management areas. They were each built at different times with different aspects in mind. So we do have some allotment additions within the management plans that they can apply for. So the conversation with kind of like a turf species maybe being more drought tolerant than another, while that application rate that I mentioned before is based off just an average application rate. This is kind of how we help incentivize that new turf species being planted. So say a facility replaced the turf that they have with a more drought tolerant turf, they would be able to apply for this allotment addition. It would give them 1 acre foot per acre of new turf that they planted to, make sure that that turf has enough water to kind of come into itself, and they still comply with their allotment, their annual water allotment. We have a revegetation addition, so kind of an incentive to remove turf acres where they can and plant some sort of low water use acres. So they could apply for, again, these are numbers for the Prescott AMA, so 0.74 acre feet per acre of any new vegetation that was planted for 3 years to make sure that that vegetation has a chance to mature and then us to kind of acknowledge that, those new plants might take more water than mature plants. We have a body of water fill and refill application. So any bodies of water within these golf courses that for some reason need to be refilled, or even like emergency uses, that can be added onto their allotment to ensure that they stay compliant. We have a leaching allotment addition to kind of touch on water quality and any turf facilities that might have, bad water quality or anything like that. And then the last one would be non-ornamental turf. So we would look at turf that we deem necessary. So that would be an athletic field, right? A school has to have an athletic field. This could also be a highly trafficked area. So it could get worn down quicker. It needs more water. So facilities can apply to get a higher application rate for turf that would be deemed non-ornamental. This is the affluent adjustment I just touched on, but ultimately, if you just use affluent, you don't need to follow a conservation allotment. But if you're using affluent in groundwater affluent, each acre foot of affluent is counted as 0.6 acre foot when you're determining compliance. The last thing that we have to kind of increase flexibility with different, types of turf facilities is the flexibility account. So this kind of acknowledges that some years are going to be drier, some years are going to be wetter, even just difficulties within management, things like that. So it's called a flexibility account. We take 20% of their annual allotment and say they didn't use all of their annual allotment. 20% of that could be put into some sort of bank account. And then the next year, if they use over their allotment, it could be first pulled from that bank account. And then they could also acquire a debit balance of up to 20% of their allotment. So they could ultimately use over 20% of their allotment before a violation will occur. And a violation will only occur when all credits have been exhausted, they have nothing left to pull from in that account, and then the debit maximum is exceeded. So they've gone over 20% of their allotment. That is when a violation will occur. So how do we keep track of this? With the Groundwater Management Act and kind of embedded in the management plans, they are expected and required to monitor and report their groundwater use or any type of water use. They're expected to report any deliveries that they deliver to other users, if they receive any water from some sort of water providers, the type of water they're receiving, the type of water they're using, things like that. This is all accounted for on their annual reports that are due yearly on March 31st. We do keep track of all water withdrawn, received, delivered, but when it comes to these conservation allotments, we're only looking at water applied to the turf, applied to the water intensive landscape. Anything used, at the community restaurant will not go against their conservation allotment. And that's kind of a separate reporting form that turf facilities will use. So we do keep track of the exact amount of water and the type of water that they're applying to the turf and to the water intensive landscape itself. So how do we know how many turf acres and et cetera they have? We call them as-built. So the facility itself is required to submit as-built to the department, and some sort of aerial imagery. It can be a survey of the land. It can be as simple as Google Earth, but something that shows, a visible picture of the facility in some way. And then we double check that with kind of our maps and our tools as well. And from that, so we're again looking at the number of acres of turf, low water use landscape, and water surface area. If anything is changed within the facility, so if they remove turf, if they add turf, anything like that, they have 90 days to report that to us. And then when it is reported to us, we will then check it If approved, we will recalculate their water allotment. So we'll use their new updated acres of each type of landscape and recalculate their allotment for them. I did add the how we define turf and low water use landscape. The key to these is a permanent application, permanent water application system. So it can't be raw desert or anything like that. Low water use landscaped area, we have a low water use and drought tolerant plants list for each active management area, and it's specific to the active management area and kind of specific to the native plants in that area. So if the plants are on this list, they can use them, they can plant them. If they are not on this list, they are not able to have them in their facility, and they are especially not able to get an application rate towards these plants. So they, to be defined as low water use landscape, they have to be within this plants list, and it has to be permanently irrigated. So the fifth management plan, like I mentioned before, there were management periods in that Groundwater Management Act. We are in the last management period in the last plan. The fifth management plan became effective January 1st of this year. Because it is the last period that was within the Groundwater Management Act, there are no more management periods or plans unless said otherwise by the legislature. So we are kind of in the fifth management plan until further notice. It took a few years to adopt the fifth management plan. This was resulted from many meetings with stakeholders and even specific turf, we call them turf breakout groups. There was management plan work groups, and then meetings that just talked about that allotment structure and those application rates. And we took comments and opinions from stakeholders in these communities. I would highly recommend, I have links to all of these meetings at the end. There's several of them, they're 2 to 3 hours long, but there's also links to all of the comments that people left. So if you were kind of interested in a lot of the opinions that certain golf courses or cities or even just the public had about these turf programs, I would highly suggest looking into that. We also have turf calculators posted on our website too, and especially with the adoption of the fifth management plan. So to kind of give facilities a good picture of what their allotment would be when that fifth management plan was adopted, they could go on our website, put in their acreage amounts and what AMA they were in, and see kind of what that would look like for them. And those are still, on our website too. So I always, tell facilities if they're looking into, redesigning their golf course, I always recommend that they go to those calculators. They can play around, figure out, what type of redesign would fit into the water allotment that they have and the access to water and how that would fit within it. The last thing that came with these 5 MPs, so each turf facility was noticed of the 5 MP and their conservation requirements and what their water allotment would look like. These went out 2 years before the adoption of the 5 MP, so 2023. Within this, and this is statutory, this was something that gives flexibility, but the process itself is pretty statutory. But basically, a turf facility could apply for a variance or administrative review process. So once they received that notice of the 5 MP, they had 90 days to apply for either one of these processes. And that gives them time to kind of come to the department, and we communicate with them very personably, one-on-one, kind of the struggles that they're facing, or maybe the specific case by case for the turf facility. A variance can last up to 5 years. An administrative review is more intense. It could be the length of the management plan. So for example, if a golf course saw their 5 MP allotment and knew that they weren't going to meet it in a year, but they, maybe had a few things that they needed to fix, they might apply for a variance and give them 3 extra years to result in meeting their 5 MP allotment. Maybe it's a bigger course, and to meet their 5 MP allotment, they had to completely reconstruct. It would take them, 10 years and cost $5 million. That would be more of an administrative review, and we would kind of have some deliverables, and a lot of these resulted in stipulation and consent orders through, with the department, with the facility. So yeah, we took these case by case, and they're a really good tool for a lot of turf facilities that utilized it. So I have 2 more slides left, but just common practices. I mean, these are pretty straightforward, but I would just say the biggest one, landscape design for the native environment that the facility is located in. I would say that's our biggest issue with a lot of these turf facilities, is they were built a long time ago without kind of that native thought in mind. They used a lot of plants that aren't native to the environment, and they use a lot of water, and now they're kind of struggling because they don't have the capacity for it. Efficient irrigation systems. We have a lot of these irrigation systems are now also getting old, and a lot of courses and turf facilities are kind of having to redo their irrigation systems. And then just access to alternative water sources. We put in that incentive for affluent, and affluent wasn't really used, and now it's very difficult to get. It's definitely fought over. Courses really try to find different water sources than groundwater. Overall, this conservation allotment, it really does reduce groundwater withdrawals. It helps, these facilities think about their planning and design more efficiently, which maybe they didn't do in the past. It does also really incentivize them to use alternative water sources. Like I said, affluent wasn't something that they, thought was very sought over, and now it is. Communication with these turf facilities and just stakeholders in general, I would say, have definitely increased with each management plan. I would say we have, very good communication with a lot of these courses, a lot of these turf facilities. With that, I will say the last bullet on the challenges is noticing. What I mean by that, sometimes it is difficult. At the end of the day, it's the facility's responsibility to notice themselves to the department. However, yes, there are facilities that kind of fly under the radar that we are not aware of, that do have more than 10 acres of turf and need to be regulated. That's kind of a challenge we have. But ultimately, most of these facilities are regulated, and we have really good communication. Challenges, like I said, those pre-1995 facilities, kind of those historic facilities, have a lot of challenges with keeping into this water allotment. They have a lot of turf, they have a lot of plants that are not native to the environment, and we do consider economic feasibility. These redesigns, these construction projects, if they were to redesign, can take a long time, and they can be, more than millions of dollars. Another challenge, probably, the biggest one, is just facility management. I don't see this as much with golf courses because they are usually managed and owned by larger entities, but HOAs, schools, even churches can have more struggles with managing this water allotment, and also not utilizing the tools we have in place. A lot of HOAs weren't, they wouldn't realize that there was that administrative review and variance process, like, a large owned golf course might have seen, or those allotment additions, they just might not be aware of things like that. So that's, kind of the challenge with some of the smaller entities, I would say. So yeah, that's kind of all I have. I have linked all the management plans, the management plan work groups. That's kind of where the discussions came from with these allotment structures and those application rates and the opinions from all of the turf stakeholders. that can all be found in that second link. And then my contact information and the AMA contact information.
Mary, thank you very much. Very thorough and a lot of material that you provided us with. I do have one question. Would it be possible for us to get a copy of your presentation? Maybe if you could send it in a PDF form to Tamara, she
Yes.
could distribute it to the Water Commission?
Yes, I can do that.
That would be terrific. You definitely have a lot of material there. Do we have any questions from the commissioners? Rob?
Yes, one additional question. We spoke a lot about golf courses, but do all of the fifth management plan practices that you described apply equally to school systems? And municipalities, municipal parks, that kind of thing?
Yes, so the water allotments, these are given to every turf facility. So whether that be, privately owned or something a city owned, if the city owned it, they would then be responsible for ensuring compliance with this water allotment. But, we do talk a lot about golf courses just because they're kind of the biggest one that we find. But yes, HOAs, schools, parks, cemeteries, a lot of like sports complexes, even things like that, they're all going to be managed under the same program.
Yeah, thanks very much.
We have a question in the chat.
I think that might.
I can't read it, so if somebody else could read it to me.
The note from me, Ron, there are folks who joined in person or online from our Reclaimed Water Work Group, and I wasn't sure if you can allow them an opportunity to ask questions should they have any, or if that's outside of the meeting rules.
Are these folks that are online you're referring to, Aaron?
Yeah, I think we had at least one join online.
Do we have any questions from you folks that are online? Not hearing any, so John, did you have one?
I was just wondering how this plan would respond to the advent of recent advanced water treatment DPR processes that are now part of the code. So that will be happening is the 0.6 reward for using reclaimed water or effluent. Will that change with time, or how will that work, do you think?
So with this management plan, like I said, once the 5MP was adopted, it will continue to stay the same until legislature states otherwise. So that 0.6 for Prescott and it's 0.6 for Phoenix as well, that will stay intact until we have, it could be a future management period or some sort of groundwater management act. It's really unclear how the legislator will want to move forward with these.
Thank you.
Don?
Thank you, Ron. You mentioned in passing water quality, and I'm wondering, or just curious, I don't really know if it's part of the 5MP or not, but considering the golf courses use pesticides, herbicides to help manage their facilities, I'm wondering how closely that material is monitored in terms of how it might become part of the waterscape.
Yeah, we don't look at that necessarily very intensely with those water quality that I'm mentioning. It's kind of the regarding the leaching allotment addition. So we're looking at the salinity of the soil. So too much salt can be toxic to the turf. So we allow more water to be used to kind of flush out that salt and then given a water allotment so they stay in compliance with their allotment. Any other water quality, we kind of work closely with ADEQ, and then that'll be ran more through them.
Thank you.
Do I have any more questions for Mary? Hearing none. Thank you very much, Mary. Very good presentation.
Thank you.
And we'll move on to
There's a
items.
Question or a comment? What you got? This is Emily Melhorn, I believe. I missed the beginning of the presentation. My apologies. Assuming that the allotment is determined by historic ET levels, how does the how does this work with changing water patterns?
Yeah, so the application rate is based on, an average application rate for the turf. These, are going to be stuck with the fifth management plan. These application rates are not changing. So to kind of take in changing weather patterns, that is kind of where the flexibility account comes in. So on wetter years, they can use below, if they have an opportunity to use below their allotment, they can bank up to 20% of their water allotment into some sort of flexibility account. And then for drier years, they can, if they use above their allotment, they can first pull from that flexibility account. And then if they have nothing in their flexibility account, they can use 20% over their allotment before some sort of compliance action would be taken into place.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Mary. Tamara, do you want to introduce our next speaker?
I will, thanks. And thanks again, Mary. That was wonderful. So next speaker is Tim Cloninger. He's an experienced agronomist. He's got 20 years in this industry. He's worked in management of golf courses. He also has degrees in turf grass science. I didn't even know that was a science. So I'm really interested to hear about it, and also has some background in water policy too. So really looking forward to his presentation as well.
Welcome, Tim.
Thank you for having me. Pull up my presentation here.
Tim, if we have any questions, would you prefer us to hold off to the end, or can we just jump in with them?
You can mix them in.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
No, that was a good presentation by Mary. And a lot of your questions were great, and I'll be able to fill in a lot more detail on that. Like Tamara said, my background was a golf course superintendent for 15 years. I worked mostly in Las Vegas. I was superintendent there for 10 years. I worked in Oregon for 4 years. My background, I worked at also University of Arizona when I was going to school, and a little bit after school, I worked for Dr. Kopek at the University of Arizona Turf Research Center. And that's where those ADWR allotments came from. There used to be a turf research center there through the ag department on Campbell Road. It's no longer there, but Dr. Kopek and Dr. Paul Brown are the ones that did all that research to create those allotment numbers back in the late 90s, early 2000s. I also did a graduate certification in GIS and also water policy with Dr. Megdal at U of A. So it gives me a different perspective, with the superintendent experience and also the water policy and the GIS experience. And Shadow Creek's where I worked in Las Vegas, which is really interesting golf course, and water efficiency and water usage was paramount, number one priority there. And I'll talk a little bit about my experience there. So the main takeaways today. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Okay. So main takeaways for today, I want to give you just an overview of benefits of golf courses. You guys got a lot of the ADWR plan right there. What I want to highlight is what has worked in that plan compared to the Southern Nevada Water Authority plan. And you'll see what makes good policy. and what might not make good policy, what really in the long run helps save water, and what benefits the golf courses and benefits the water usage. And then I'll go into some details on efficient use of water on golf courses and what all the golf courses are doing now to be efficient, and how do you continue to be efficient, and what's in the future coming up that can help them be more efficient. So just give you, I want to put kind of everything in perspective. So that golf course I worked at in Las Vegas, construction started 1985. It was, finally completed 1989. The water situation back then was way different. You can see here, this is 1983, where they're actually overflowing water out of Lake Mead, right? A lot of the golf courses were built in the 90s, early 90s. Didn't see a lot of construction in the 2000s, right? So it was a different time. Benefits? Yes. Oh, it says we can't see the slides.
Yeah.
Can we keep going or should I wait? Keep going? Okay. Just real quickly, if you want an overall of the benefits of golf courses, there's a group, Arizona Alliance for Golf. It's a nonprofit. You go to their website, has a lot of information. Okay, you can pull up all the economic impact and the overall water usage and everything in the state. It's a good site. I recommend you go look into that. They've put a lot of work into that. I'll talk about specific benefits right here.
Hey, Tim?
Yes.
Just a comment on that previous slide.
Uh-huh.
I just want to, I was going over that and I just want to make it clear when they talk about all golf operations account for only 2% of daily water use, that's really going to be dependent on the location,
Correct.
the size of the city that the golf course is located in and so forth. Because when I look at
Right.
Flagstaff, it's more like 8% of our.
Okay. Yeah, I
water
think
use.
that number is based on the overall percentage by the state. That probably has agriculture factored into it.
With some places higher and maybe some places lower,
Correct.
depending on populations and so forth.
So what I've seen, one of the major benefits in Las Vegas and Phoenix, reducing the urban heat island effect. That's becoming a big problem in Phoenix, Las Vegas, where these cities have grown more and more concrete, and the nighttime temperatures just are not reducing like they used to. And that's urban heat island effect is one of them. And turf is a great mitigator of that. Stormwater management. I'll show you some slides in Phoenix where golf courses are really relied upon for managing the stormwater. Provides wildlife habitat, restores damaged lands. For example, I worked on a golf course in California that was built on an old dump. So it's reclaiming that land. Turf is a good recovering of the soil, and overall improves air quality. So benefits of golf courses that Maricopa County states is, they're trying to achieve a 25% tree coverage, and the golf courses provide a lot of trees. Where you can see that 500 million, if you took the trees out of the golf courses, 500 million in publicly funded installments and maintenance costs would have to replace that. I won't go too much into this, but if you look at University of Minnesota, their study here, I provide the link. Their analysis suggests that golf courses provide the greatest amount of cooling as compared to other land uses, and that was for Minneapolis. Stormwater management. This is a really interesting one. In Phoenix, it's a 20-kilometer wash, the Indian Bend Wash, that runs through Phoenix. In the 60s, there was a big flood. 1965, there was a big flood through there, and they had to come up with a stormwater management plan. Is the original plan was to create a huge concrete wash that ran through the city. They eventually they decided, instead of doing a concrete wash, why don't we stormwater could filter, gives our residents something to do. You know, there's parks, golf courses, everything that runs through this wash. So this golf course here is Camelback. It's the Marriott property. So if you see here, no, you can't see my cursor, but the water, you know, comes right through this wash. Like when there's a big rain, it's full of water. This area down here where you see the brown area, the non-overseeded area there, that will become completely full of water. And they actually will have to close the golf course for a couple days. But this is a great benefit to this community to filter all this stormwater, move it off. A lot of it probably does, you know, filter in. The turf's a good filter. And it has a use for the residents. So that's an interesting project. We even looked at possibly doing some groundwater recharge through that area. You guys got a lot of the water policy bullet points, but what I really want to talk about is just the history of ADWR and how that golf course water policy started. You know, it started in 1985 with the Groundwater Management Act. And the two main bullet points, which you guys heard about, the turf acreage restrictions and the maximum annual water allotments. Where before pre-1985, there was no turf restrictions on acreage. You could build a 200-acre golf course in Phoenix. But after 1985, if you're within the active management areas, you had to be under 90 acres for 18 holes. Okay, and that was very forward thinking to start that in 1985. Compared to, I'll say, Southern Nevada Water Authority, which started it later in 2003 and missed basically all the golf course construction. All right, you guys got all the details there. Limits the golf course to 90 acres. In Phoenix, since 1985, there's been 95 golf courses built. So by getting that plan out by 1985, really created those golf courses to be efficient with their water use.
Okay, interrupt
Yeah.
just briefly with a question. I guess it's on the previous slide now. So you're saying 54% are, I'll wait till you get back.
Oh, yeah.
It says 54% of the courses are regulated. So the flip of that, 46% are, should I interpret that as pre-1985 and they?
No, so pre-1985 is, you know, Mary was talking about that. Pre-1985 still is regulated if they're using a drop of groundwater. So there are, I'm pretty sure I got that off ADWR's website, but 54%, there are golf courses that are not regulated by that annual water allotment because they do not use any groundwater.
Okay, that's
So,
the
yeah,
distinction.
Thank
you.
There's a lot more than you think that are using CAP water, or maybe Salt River water, or they're on all effluent and they're not using groundwater. So, but like Mary was saying, if they do switch and they do use any groundwater, they will fall under that. Correct. So average size of course in Phoenix prior to 1985 was 105 acres. Post 1985, 84 acres. And that is the best way to save water and be more water efficient is less acreage. So this golf course, this is in Scottsdale in Carefree, which is only 70 acres, and it was built in the 60s. And it was really the first desert golf course, right? And that's most likely what gave ADWR the idea of, you know, we can build great golf here with not over 90 acres, right? And this golf course is only 70 acres. One of the best in Phoenix, one of the best in the country. So that kind of, I think that led to their ideas as well. Those are the allotment numbers for Phoenix. I won't go through those. You guys learned a lot about Prescott. Application rate, like you guys were asking before, that's based on the research conducted at U of A Turf Center by Dr. Brown, Jeffrey Gilbert, and Dr. Kopek. That was based on 1988 to 1996 weather data. And they also had test plots. They had areas, they had lysimeters underneath of them to measure any runoff or check for chemicals like you guys were stating before. And that does not include rainfall, but they, you know, it's a research setting versus real life. So these numbers sometimes can be very difficult for certain golf courses that might have different circumstances, right? For example, the uniformity on the irrigation system at U of A was 80%. That's how uniform that sprinkler coverage is. And 80% is pretty high. You know, there might be golf courses that have much lower than 80 if they're, you know, older or exposed to a lot of wind or different soil types, slopes, a lot of factors involved. But those numbers were based on a research setting. And you guys heard about the fifth management plan. And the big thing for me on the fifth management plan that really stands out is these courses that were pre-1985 are referred to as legacy courses, which Mary alluded to it pretty quickly, but in the previous management plans, the legacy courses, their allotment was based on their actual acreage, where now it's based off of 90 acres. So if they still have 110 acres or more, you know, their allotment is based on 90. So this new management plan is, you know, for some legacy courses, it might be a little bit more challenging where they have to make a decision on what do we irrigate, how much do we overseed. I'll go into overseeding in a little bit, but you know, the courses that have been designed post 1985 are already below 90. So Southern Nevada Water Authority, for example, they started in 2003. And Southern Nevada Water Authority is the opposite of Arizona, where they regulate surface water. They don't regulate groundwater at all. Their main focus is Colorado River water. Las Vegas is dependent on Lake Mead, which is Colorado River water. You know, Nevada has 300,000 acre foot allotment, which is very small. And that is their water source. Groundwater is not regulated for golf courses. So it's much different, but the policies I want to highlight is, you know, they started in 2003. Their water budget up until this year was 6.3 acre feet per irrigated acre, which was a very doable number for Las Vegas. Golf courses being limited to 5 acres per hole started in 2003. And there's only 2 golf courses built in Southern Nevada Water Authority's area since 2003. So the policy was late, where Arizona's was out ahead and really helped those golf courses be designed efficiently. And Southern Nevada Water Authority had a rebate program where they were paying golf courses to reduce turf, paying them to take it out. I think it was $1 a square foot or even higher during some times, but they converted 936 acres of turf to low water use landscape. So they had to pay their way to try to get towards that 90 acres. And turf reduction is not always a great water saver, especially on an existing golf course. If the golf course does not change their irrigation system, if they don't retrofit the system they have or put in a new system with a new design, there can be some waste where the turf is shrunk down, but the irrigation isn't really built to match it. So turf reduction's a great way to save water if it's done properly. So what has Southern Nevada Water Authority done recently? Beginning in last January, they reduced the water budget from 6.3 acre feet to 4 acre feet. They made it mandatory to remove all non-functional turf. So like turf around your clubhouse or entryways, basically areas that you weren't golfing on that were just there for aesthetics. And that is pretty standard around Las Vegas. There's no front yards with grass, and they're very proactive on reducing turf because in Las Vegas, that's water, outdoor water use is water they don't get back. So all the water they get back and treat, they put back into Lake Mead and they get credit for it. So their main driver is to reduce outdoor water use as much as they can. They're not as concerned with the indoor water use.
Go ahead, Don.
Quick question. I'm a little bit curious about how your use of the term water budget relates or does not relate to the ADWR use of that same thing,
Right.
that same term. In Arizona, it seems like in the context of a golf course, the water budget is equated to the the different turf acres and low use acreage. And in your case, you seem to be coming up with a much higher number initially. And then when you've gone through and provided or introduced efficiencies to the operation, it's lowered down to about 4 acre feet per irrigated acre.
Right. Well, no. So this 6.3 acre feet was pre-January 2024. That's what they would give you per acre of turf as your allotment. So if you had, 90 acres of turf, take the 90 acres times it by the 6.3, and that's your annual water allotment in acre feet. 2024, they reduced that number all the way down to 4, which is drastic. To go from 6.3 down to 4 is extreme. And you can't grow grass in Las Vegas on 4 acre feet per acre. That is a number that is way too low. Even if you're not overseeding, that's too low in most years.
And also, this is all surface water use south the Colorado River, correct?
Yes, if they're using groundwater, they're not regulated. Every golf course kind of has their own portfolio of water, but most courses there are on city water, which is any city water there is Colorado River water, which is surface water.
So if they are using another water source, potentially groundwater, to make up the difference between the 4 acre feet
Right.
per irrigated acre and something closer to 6 acre feet, that could be unreported groundwater.
You do have to report your water usage on groundwater to the Nevada Department of Water Resources. But it's not regulated through turf. That would be based on your well allotment. And it's much harder to get well rights in Nevada, well, in Las Vegas. It's hard to get well rights. It's especially now. They're very expensive. And they're very, very hard to get. For example, the golf course I worked at in North Las Vegas had 3 wells and the old water rights from even pre 1980. And then the other half of the usage was city water. And there's not, like I was saying before, there's not a big drive for Las Vegas to use effluent because they do return that into Lake Mead and get credit for it. So it doesn't hurt their overall, water portfolio. 300,000 acre feet is not a lot compared to the other states. So they have to really utilize that.
Thank you.
Yeah, so 4 acre feet now, which is very challenging. There's been golf courses in Las Vegas that have shut for the summer, shut the water off. Tried to make that 4 acre feet, really, really struggled. And that didn't turn out to be great either, because then you have to try to re-wet the soil and didn't really save much water. But it really comes down to the genetics question, which you were bringing up before, plant genetics, which turf species is the best, most drought tolerant. And in Las Vegas and in Arizona, Phoenix, southern Arizona, Bermuda grass is your most efficient turf grass for water. It's a warm season plant. There's 2 types of grasses, a warm season grass and a cool season grass. They differ on their photosynthesis and how they transpire and all that. But the warm season grasses will always use less water, more drought tolerant, more heat tolerant. So the key for golf courses in Las Vegas and southern Arizona now is to have a really good base of Bermuda grass. And we'll talk about the overseeding. And so that's what overseeding is where you take a cool season grass like ryegrass and you overseed the warm season grass Bermuda, which will go dormant. They'll go brown in mid-November, and the cool season grass is there to provide green, playable surface throughout basically November to March, April. And then it will transition back to Bermuda grass in the summer. So just an overview of those 2 policies. Like I said, the ADWR encouraged efficient water use design in 1985. Got out ahead of the construction boom. ADWR has stayed relatively consistent with their turf allotment numbers, which I feel like they're good numbers. If you're efficient on your property, you can make those numbers with ADWR, especially with that credit system. Southern Nevada Water Authority was late to enforce turf acreage restrictions. Then they paid for it, try to get it down. And then recently they've drastically reduced the allotment number, and a lot of the golf courses are in trouble and having a hard time. SNWR also, their number is based on acreage. So if you were an efficiently designed golf course, and there are several in Las Vegas that designed it efficiently, where they have 70 acres of grass, you take that 70 acres and you times it by the 4. So they're almost punished compared to a course that has 110 acres. You know, their allotment will be higher and they have more flexibility there. So ADWR has done a good job avoiding that. Here you can see this is Bermuda grass decline in southern Nevada. That's warm season grass, and overseeding every year with ryegrass. If you don't transition back to the Bermuda grass, that's what can happen. And there's a lot of golf courses that are like that. And if you don't have Bermuda grass, you can't make it through the summer there. So what can we do now to start being as efficient as possible as we can? And I will say most golf courses are already doing a lot. They're doing as much as they can, but these are the things that are kind of coming up right now. Bermuda grass, there's newer varieties of Bermuda. Tiff Tough Bermuda grass is 20% more drought tolerant and will use less water than the existing Bermuda grasses that are out there. Like you said, turf genetics is a big one. There's newer bluegrasses. There's these newer cool season grasses where you can interseed with, you can start integrating these into your golf courses, and that will help save water in the long term, become more drought tolerant. The big one in Phoenix is overseed or non-overseed. You're starting to see more golf courses switch to non-overseeding. Multiple reasons. The Bermuda grasses are better. They're staying greener longer, like that Tiff Tough I was telling you about that uses less water. It stays greener longer. It greens up quicker. So that dormant period is shorter. There's been several clubs in Phoenix that have done that, and it's been very successful. Some courses are even starting to think about using zoysia grass, which is another warm season grass that has a lot more winter tolerance, cold tolerance, and stays greener longer, greens up quicker. Can't be overseeded though. So it's a big move. There's some courses that are in the decision phase right now where they're leaning towards going to zoysia grass. Irrigation efficiency and management is very important. New systems designed properly will save water over an older system. Once a system becomes over 20 years old, you start to see inefficiencies, nozzle wear, just older sprinkler technology. And I'll talk about future savings. This here is just a quick USGA water conservation clip here on turf. You want to see just different turf grasses and what their ET rates are and how much water they lose. Like I said, warm season grasses are always better. Cool season grasses, there's always variation between species type, and that's where I don't have as much experience on the water usage on cool season grasses, but there's a lot of testing going on. If you want to go, it's called NTEP, the National Turf Evaluation Program. They evaluate all these different turf grasses all over the country at different sites, and they measure them for water use, drought tolerance, everything. So you can see the newer grasses that come out and see which ones are going to be best for drought tolerance and heat.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
Quick question. To what degree are these ET rates a function of prevailing temperatures? In other words, the question I'm sitting with here in my mind is, are these, 6.2 or 6.4, or whatever the number is for the valley under the 5MP plan, is that the appropriate number for Flagstaff that is cooler? Or, what kind of a target would be appropriate for the Flagstaff area?
Yeah, there have to be, a lot of research that goes into that.
Has that research?
I'm not going to throw a number out there. I don't think there has been the research for Flagstaff specifically because maybe there is.
Yeah, I can send out the document that we use. So when we do irrigation consultations, we have an ET rate that is based on Flagstaff, but I think it was from maybe 10 to 15 years ago, but I can send out the paper if the commission is interested in seeing it that we use as our baseline.
Yeah, that would be great.
You can pull. No, this is, I believe this is New Mexico. I'll provide you the link on that. It was still summary mean. Yeah, I think this would be even like in a greenhouse environment. Mean summary. Let me get you the link on that. What I was just trying to show here is just the difference between the warm season and cool season. But yeah, I don't have specific data myself on Flagstaff.
Well,
Yeah.
you mentioned Flagstaff, and I wouldn't necessarily expect research
Right.
here, but I mean, has this been studied in Minnesota or New Jersey or whatever, different environments to
Yeah,
get a sense of how this varies with local circumstances?
correct. So here you can just see the difference several years after successful transition programs where going back to Bermuda grass early on versus that slide on the right where the Bermuda grass has declined, the ryegrass is dying. When you transition to all Bermuda grass early on in the summer, you can really save a lot of water and be efficient in water use. And that's a big thing for Phoenix, Las Vegas, that area where you have warm season grass and you transition. This here is a non-overseeded golf course. This is Alta Mesa and Mesa. That's Tiff Tough right there, non-overseeded in January. They spray a little bit of color pigment on it just to kind of enhance the green, but it does retain a lot of its green color. Yeah, that actually helps the plant stay warmer and heats up quicker. So yeah, that's done really well. There's several other golf courses that are switching to that grass to save water and to give them more playable time throughout the year so they don't have to close for overseed. Irrigation efficiency, so a new system with better uniformity. I was talking to you about the distribution uniformity of the sprinklers before. A new system will achieve to try to get 80% or better. And that can save significant amount of water. 10 to 30% a new system could save. The old systems lose their efficiencies, and the new systems also have a lot more technology. I will say almost every golf course has individual sprinkler control. So every sprinkler on the golf course, they can control how much that sprinkler runs. They can turn it up, they can turn it down, where 15, 20 years ago, maybe 5 or 6 sprinkler heads would turn on at one time through one valve. Well, now they're all individually controlled, called valve and head system. So each head has its own wire and can be adjusted individually. So what a superintendent will do, they'll go through their golf course, they'll use moisture meters, they'll check, physically check the soil, and then adjust the sprinklers. So if you see their log of what runs, you'll see all these different run times. They're bumping down wetter areas, they're turning up drier areas, making it as efficient as they can. And the reason they do that is they want to save water because usually the club is paying for water. And they also want firmer conditions. Golfers prefer the golf course to be firm, not overwatered. It's overwater, they get no ball roll, the ball plugs. So golf courses are always trying to stay as firm as they can, but keep the turf healthy. Just a picture here of this is the golf course I worked at, shows you the irrigation design where there we even had sprinkler heads on the edge of the fairways where we had ins and outs. So we could water the rough separately than the fairways. So there was a head sprinkler throwing out into the rough. That was a part circle, and then a head throwing in, watering just the fairways. So we had different soil type in the fairways than the rough. So they had two different water requirements. You'll see that's not super common on a lot of golf courses, but you will see it. But like I said, each sprinkler will be individually controlled, run through a central control computer. And the systems now, they all have access with their phones, a tablet. They can adjust them out there. They're tapped into weather stations. So they run off of ET, the evapotranspiration rate. And these run times when they water are based off of the weather conditions. That's been one of the biggest things I'd say in the last 10 years is just the use of moisture meters. The handheld moisture meters, every superintendent has them. They check the moisture of the greens, the fairways, and that will help dictate when they irrigate. So on greens they might go 3-4 nights without irrigating on greens, and they just spot water with hand watering. You're seeing also now moisture sensors that they can put on their fairway mowers and on their rough mowers that use an infrared system where they are calculating the moisture as they're mowing, and then it creates a map similar to like that's soil moisture. That was all done by hand by me with a lot of data points by hand, but now they have ones you can put on a fairway mower, or you can even have it on a golf cart, and you can drive up and down the fairways and produce a moisture map and then irrigate based off of that. So dial it in even more. Central control systems have gotten a lot better. Weather stations have improved. Irrigation management of that system where you change your crop coefficient throughout the year can save a lot of water. So if you go to Dr. Kopek and Dr. Brown did all that research too, when you look at there's reference ET and then there's crop ET. So reference ET is just based off of what 2-inch tall fescue grass would use. Then there's a crop coefficient, which will give you a percentage of that. So Bermuda grass, for example, would be less than the tall fescue. So it might be, say in the summer, July, it might be at 70% of the reference ET. So in your system, you can change that. You change the crop coefficient. So you say, okay, I'm all Bermuda grass now. That's my reference ET. It now irrigates at 70% of that reference ET. And you can find crop coefficients for most turf grasses. Finding them monthly is a little bit harder, but University of Arizona has produced those. I'm not sure exactly for this region, but definitely Southern Arizona they have. This just kind of shows you what these moisture meters look like. There's a couple different brands of the handheld ones. There's also in-ground moisture sensors they install. Some golf courses will have them everywhere. They'll have a bunch of them in the fairway. Some will have just a few, but that's always giving them data, real time. They could see what the soil moisture is. And then, like I said, the sensors here, the one in the corner on the fairway mower. Oh, am I not on there? Oh, shoot. Oh, there you go. So you can see the one on the fairway mower, it has a sensor on the back of that fairway mower that's collecting data as they mow. And that technology is only going to improve. A lot of the fairway mowers coming up in the future are autonomous fairway mowers that operators not even there, right? So it's going to get more data, more technical. This just shows, GIS wise, it gives you the soil moisture and you can start adding all the layers on there. You've got your sprinklers. You've got your soil moisture. There's even sensors you can put on the fairway mowers that are going to give you turf health. So that all helps the superintendent make better decisions. There is some soil moisture sensing with satellites. It's kind of has mixed reviews on that. Just wanted to show that out there.
Question?
Yeah.
Could you go back to that, soil moisture, slide by satellite? Do you know which satellite that is? Is that one of the Landsats or is it?
There's one or two companies doing it. The research hasn't proven it to work in every case, right? So it's had a hard time taking off. I can't tell you which satellites they use. I know they use it's the same ones they use for identifying tree health.
Yeah, well,
yeah,
the different satellites have different resolution and this looks like pretty good resolution, but I'm wondering how wide,
I think
fairway
that's their
actually
issue. I
is.
think the gridding on it is too big, and this is all interpolated, correct? They take a data point and interpolate it, and your map is only going to be as good as how many data points you have on it. Where when you compare it to mine like that, I physically took over 250, probably 300 data points on a fairway like that.
Labor intense.
Yes. But the turf like this that goes on the fairway mower right there, the one that has basically has the passive remote sensing on it, it's getting a lot of data points as well. I mean, more than 300 data points, but it's, because it's obviously a lot closer to the ground. But yeah, the satellite, I think that's their issue. I don't think they have the amount of data they need for areas that are as small as golf courses. Golf courses compared to agriculture, right? It's this, the satellite imagery stuff's used more in agriculture where they have fields of thousands and thousands of acres where turf, you're dealing with pretty small acreage.
Yeah, I'm a small grower, orchard grower in California, and part of the problem with small acreages is just as you said, the resolution of satellite data
Right.
isn't really good enough to get you the detail that you really need to figure out a specific problem.
Right. So yeah, that's why I see the sensors that go on the mowers or the carts. That's the direction that would probably be more successful in this.
What percentage of golf courses are using this technology?
I mean, that's a hard one. Yeah,
Half,
no, not
quarter,
well,
10%?
the handheld sensors. Oh, handheld sensors, I'd say it's almost,
But I would say more sophisticated
oh,
stuff, you're actually getting
I
a
would say
lot
it's
of data
probably
back.
10 to 15%, but
So this isn't really widespread use yet.
not yet.
Okay.
But it's getting closer as they adapt it and improve it and link it directly to the irrigation systems. It will be used more often. So future savings, like I talked about, the Tif-Tuff Bermuda grass or zoysia, or genetically just looking at different cool season grasses that are going to be more drought tolerant and use less water. That the genetics have improved a lot. The challenges with any turf type change is it is challenging to have a clean renovation, especially on a warm season grass. Like if you're trying to switch from an old common Bermuda grass and switch to Tif-Tuff, it's very difficult to eradicate the old common Bermuda grass. Cool season grasses are easier to change out because They don't have the rhizomes and stolons that will keep coming back. And they're also expensive. Drip irrigation is something the USGA has spent a lot of time on, using subsurface drip for turf, which it has shown a lot of promise, but the challenges right now are it's very expensive to install, and it's not really proven on a large scale. You know, they've done it a lot on tee boxes, smaller areas, haven't really done it on, say, a 90-acre golf course. So there you can see a TIF Tough study. It's a drought study that was done in Texas. Here's what the USGA is recommending, you know, the tools for water conservation on golf courses. You know, they mentioned drip on turf. The adoption of that is, you know, almost zero. I know a few courses that have done some, but not much. Reducing irrigated acreage, that's a really good one. But like I said, it's really good when it's done right. If you do it with a new irrigation system or with an irrigation redesign, very good. Reducing winter overseed, that's a big one that's coming up. Using the soil moisture meters and upgrading the irrigation system and using wetting agents. So I will say almost every golf course is using wetting agents, which really help with soil moisture uniformity. Basically like a soap product, you basically just spray it and breaks down hydrophobic properties in the soil and allows the moisture to be more uniform and infiltration to improve. Just about every golf course is using wetting agents. There's some pictures of drip. You can find a lot of information. USGA has done done quite a bit of that. And that's reduced water on tee boxes. I could see it being very useful on tees at this point. But that's all I have. Any questions?
Thanks, Tim. Any questions from the commission? Karin?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to let you know that I have to leave at 6.
Okay. Any more questions? Go ahead, Lee.
You mentioned that Nevada was giving away $1 per square foot or approximately $40,000 per acre. Is that a meaningful amount to convert a golf course in the irrigation systems? Or is it, what does that cost in real life?
It was back when they were doing it, you know, in the early 2000s. That went a long way. Now $1 a square foot wouldn't pay for it. It paid to remove the grass, but retrofitting the irrigation can be a lot more challenging, because when you start moving one sprinkler, you throw off the spacing with everything else, you know, especially when you're coming in from the outside. So yeah, when turf reduction is done with a new irrigation system is when you really see the biggest benefit.
Emily put something in the chat. Their current rate is now $5 in Southern Nevada. On average, $18 per square foot to convert. Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Don.
Thank you. Most, in fact, well, a lot of, if not most golf courses have water features built into the course. And, you know, there's a couple reasons for that. It makes, you know, it makes for better playing conditions. It also provides on-site storage for water. It also allows for, as you said in the Indian Bin Wash example, some recharge potential associated with the golf course. Are golf courses thinking about the possibility of recycling that water, taking water out of some of the lower water features, pumping it back uphill to areas of the golf course and allowing it to be a source of water to, I don't know if I'm saying this correctly, be additional source of water to water the course, you know, in a down gradient fashion, I suppose.
Yeah, well, you can see, let me find that slide. You know, it's interesting, you know, bodies of water. Where do I have that? So bodies of water in Arizona will use more water than grass. The evaporation off of a lake uses more water than turf, right? So lakes use, you look at ADWR's allotment number for surface water area, they give you 6.2 acre feet. That's more than they give you for overseeded grass. So lakes can actually be a pretty big user of water, and especially if they leak and they're not lined properly. And that is an area where, you know, when I'm working with golf courses, if they're trying to save water, would be to actually fill in a lake. If it's just there for aesthetics. Now, like you were saying, a lot of the lakes are irrigation lakes. You know, they have to have those lakes. That's where they pump their water into. They store it there and then they pump it out from a pump station out of that lake. That's their storage. So, you know, those can't be removed. But aesthetic lakes that are just there just for looks, if, you know, that could be a possibility, an area to save water, or renovate the lake where you line it and make sure it's not leaking.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? If not, thank you, Tim. Terrific presentation.
Thank you.
Very good. And I think, Nicole, did you want to address the commission? You had a card filled out, I think, for the previous public participation, but we decided to hold off until after Tim's presentation.
Thank you, Chair Doba, Commissioners, Director Williams, and those on the phone. My name is Nicole Ellman. I'm here on behalf of Pine Canyon with our Director of Agronomy, Josh Clevenger. We are extremely interested in the fifth management plan, although it does regulate groundwater and city code prevents golf courses from using anything but effluent water on their golf courses. We've still adopted and actively practiced some of those measures within the fifth management plan. In the past 3 years, we've used an average less than 3 acre feet per irrigated acre. We did just recently undergo a massive turf reduction and irrigation efficiency measure, reducing our irrigated acres by 10.25 acres. Josh can speak a little bit more on that. And we also did want to take this opportunity to formally invite the commissioners and any staff who may be interested out to the golf course to see those efficiencies in place. Aaron has my contact information and we would love to showcase what we're doing out there. And Josh has a little more to touch on.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, commissioners, for hosting this. Communication's been great. I spoke to the commission a couple of years ago prior to our irrigation renovation and golf course renovation, speaking to our efforts in being sustainable. And, you know, Tim spoke a lot to this. The golf industry in general, I think, gets a black eye for being water wasters, where we're actually, I think, some of the most efficient users of water. During our renovation, as Nicole spoke to, we reduced turf from 82 acres to 72. And we renovated the entire irrigation system. The club spent over $6 million upgrading the irrigation system. In the first year, we've seen roughly a 25% increase in efficiency. I expect that to improve over the next few years as we kind of mature some of the new areas that we built. Some of Tim's examples of water use efficiency practices, we've put into place over the last few years, the mower mounted, equipment mounted moisture meters. We've been using them for the last 2 years. We map 30 acres of our fairways twice a week. We take over 10,000 moisture data collection points on 30 acres of fairways, and we use these maps in conjunction with our irrigation system to make those runtime adjustments and just be that much more efficient. Super cool technology. I think Tim's number, about 10%, 15% of golf courses are using this technology now. I think that was a correct number. In the next 5 to 10 years, I think this technology will be industry-wide, or should be. So yeah, we're doing some cool stuff at Pine Canyon. We're doing everything we can to use less water. And as Nicole said, we'd be happy to have you all out and give you a little tour of what we do. Yep.
Thank you for the invitation. And Nicole, did you say Aaron or somebody was going to poll the commission as far as, potential times or dates or whatever?
Yes, I don't want to volunteer Erin for anything she's not ready for, but she and I have been in close contact about this invitation, and I think she is willing to help coordinate that. I was on the working group for the reclaimed water rates, and I plan to be very involved moving forward with the rate study and any additional working group opportunities that there may be. It's a very hot topic, right? And so, Erin, is that still true?
Yeah, and I imagine Tamara, myself, or Emily, we can all help to coordinate that site visit.
Great.
Thank
Sounds
you.
good.
Yep.
Thanks so much.
Thank
Glad
you.
to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it's starting to get a little past 6 o'clock. We have no old business. We're down to informational items to and from the chair, commission members, or staff. We'll go around the commission. First of all, Don, do you have anything?
Nothing from me.
Okay, Matthew, anything?
I have nothing.
Nothing? Rob?
This time.
Well, I do. I just want to mention that we're having a Coconino Plateau Watershed Partnership meeting next Friday at 10 a.m. on August 29th. It's a virtual Zoom meeting. And we're going to have a presentation from Dr. Ben Ruddle from NAU that I think is going to be interesting. I just wanted to invite the commission if you were interested in viewing it virtually. The topic is water productivity in the eye of the beholder. And I thought it was very interesting because he's looking at a metric that we've been using in the water industry for years and years, GPCD. And he's saying maybe it's time to look at some other things as far as how efficiently we're using our water other than GPCD. And he's come up with what he calls a WVI, a water value intensity, that takes into account total revenues, taxes, payrolls in the community, and utilizes water use with that to look at water use in a little different perspective in some ways than just that. So if you are interested, go to the website for the CPWAC, look at the agenda for next week's meeting, and there's a link on there where you can join at 10 o'clock to sit in on it. But it kind of caught my eye. That's the only thing I had. Lee, do you have anything?
Nothing from me at this time. Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay. Anybody online? No? All right. With that, then I've got about 6:05 and we will adjourn. Thanks all for attending.